Hey everybody, today I'm going to do a comparison video between the three top models of half-inch stubby impacts made by Mighty 7. Now stubby impacts are real popular all around, and what I want to do in this video is give you a good comparison between the three of these, so if you're looking at them you can pick the right one for you. And specifically what we're looking at are power levels. Now these do have maximum torque ratings ranging anywhere from 500 foot-pounds up to 700 foot-pounds. But what we're going to focus on in this video is working torque. And that's achieved during the first 10 or 15 seconds of use when you hold it on the trigger. So that's how I run all my tests across the board with any impact. And to prove the torque ratings, we're going to be using a Skidmore-Wilhelm. That's one of the only things that can accurately measure torque reliably as well as consistently, and you're going to be able to see the torque ratings firsthand. Now in addition to that, I will give you some side-by-side comparisons to not only go over the difference in dimensions, but also weight and size, and we'll also take a look at these compared to a standard full-size half-inch impact. Now many times something like this would work where a full-size one just won't fit, and that's why many people want to add these to a toolbox. But if you don't realize the differences between them, they all could look the same. So next let me give you some side-by-side comparisons, and then we're going to see how they actually perform. To give you a good side-by-side size comparison between the three different models, I've laid them out in order of power. In the front is the oldest model, which is a 500 foot-pound version, followed by a 600, and then finally the 700 foot-pound version. Now I want to point out right off the bat, the two lower power units do have the directional change switches behind them, and that adds to the overall length. With the 700 foot-pound version does have an upgraded design with the directional change switch directly behind the trigger. The grips on them are also going to be different. With the two lower powered units, it's an overmold grip that's rubbery and it feels much like a drill. Where the 700 foot-pound version, even though it does look rubbery, it's not. It's a very hard plastic and it doesn't have that non-slip ability of these two. And finally, let's talk about the overall size on them. The smallest by far is going to be the 600 foot-pound version, but it's also the most heavy. The head is going to be thicker and the overall unit is going to be longer. So where you gain additional length right here, you're going to lose in width as well as overall length of the entire tool. Another thing you really want to take into consideration if you're looking at the 500 or the 600 foot-pound version is that directional change mechanism and how many settings you have. With the older model, which is the 500 foot-pound version, we have 3 possible settings in forward and 3 possible power settings in reverse. When we bump up to the 600 foot-pound, we have the same 3 settings in forward, however we only have 1 possible setting in reverse, and the only way to control the power with this unit is to use the variable speed trigger. With the 700 foot-pound version, we also have 3 speeds in both directions, and you can change it from forward or reverse simply by moving this tab up and down. Now this is currently set up for right-handed use. You can take this apart, move that over, and easily set it up for left-handed use. So it's going to work exactly the same way in either direction, but out of the box, this is the way it's going to come. Now if we want to change the power levels in either forward or reverse, you see this little tab here that rotates 1 through 3 on either direction. And you can see speed mode 1 or power mode 1 is going to be a low speed. So if you pull the trigger in all the way, it's going to not be applying maximum torque. Now if we pop that up to speed setting 2, it's going to be a medium speed. And then finally speed mode 3 is going to be full power. When we take a look at one of the Mighty 7 stubbies next to a full-size impact, which in this case is an Ingersoll Rand 231, which many of you probably already own, you're going to see how this will be able to get into those very tight situations where this one just will not work. Now this is the 500 foot-pound version. That becomes even more apparent when we look at the 600 foot-pound version because it is even shorter. Now this is going to have a little bit of extra weight, but it's not going to weigh nearly as much as a full size. And then for that extra power, we can bump up to the 700 foot-pound model. It's not quite as short, but it's still much smaller than a full-size impact. Something else you might want to consider if you're looking at any stubby impact is a set of stubby impact sockets. Now all of these in this foam tray are going to be a half-inch version, metric, going from 10 millimeters up to 24 millimeters without skipping any sizes. And to show you the real advantage of that, I've put a standard shallow 19 millimeter half-inch impact socket on the front of the stubby impact. What we'll do is take the 19 millimeter out of the foam tray, put it directly beside it, And you can see the tremendous size difference between the two. Now to do a torque test with all three impacts, I'll be using a Skidmore Wilhelm Model R with a 1 1/4 inch bolt and a 2-inch nut. With this combination, we can accurately measure bolt tension in pounds up to 110,000. And you'll take that number, divide it by 70, and it's going to give you an actual torque rating. So what we'll do are 3 different runs on each of the impacts, alternating them between each run. Each one will be a 15-second run time at 90 psi of working pressure. So we'll look for consistent readings, we'll take an average out of the 3 runs, divide it by 70, and that's going to give us our average working torque rating. But what I've done is one additional step. I put a reverse thread nut and bolt in here. They're all going to be in reverse, and we're going to see the real numbers that you'll expect on a daily basis. Now I do want to point out, we'll compare that number to the advertised working torque ratings, and we'll see if it's at the same level, if it's below, or if it comes in above it. Now one additional thing, in between each run I will be cleaning off all the lubrication off the washer face, the back of the nut, as well as the threads on the bolt, and replacing it with a fresh coating of R-0050 test bolt lube from Skidmore Wilhelm. This is specifically designed to work with this unit, and it's how we're going to get those very accurate results. Okay, we got through all the testing and the numbers were very consistent through each run. The 4611 ranged anywhere from 32,000 to 33,000 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 32,333. Divide that by a factor of 70 because of the nut and bolt combination we're using, and it comes up with an actual working torque rating of 462 foot-pounds. Their advertised working torque rating was 350 foot-pounds, so we achieved 132% of the advertised total. The 4630 was even more. It came in between 36,000 and 37,000 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 36,500. Divide that by a factor of 70, we came out with an actual working torque rating of 521 foot-pounds. And compared to their rating of 350 foot-pounds, we achieved 149% of their advertised totals. And finally, the 4232 ranged anywhere from 30,500 to 31,500 pounds of bolt tension, with an average of 31,167. Divide that by a factor of 70, it came out with an actual working torque rating of 445 foot-pounds. Compared to their numbers of 400 foot-pounds, we still achieved 111% of the advertised rating. So now you've seen a good comparison between all three of the Mighty 7 half-inch stubby impact wrenches. Now I want to point out in this video we were focused on working torque, and specifically reverse working torque. The nut and bolt combination I had have reverse threads, So the power levels you saw are with full reverse, not full forward, which is not nearly as important. You got to think, when you're putting something back together, you want to use a torque wrench to make sure everything's correct. You don't want to hammer on it with 500 foot-pounds of torque. But to remove a bolt, especially when you're fighting corrosion, having that extra power is going to remove it, where a less powerful impact just isn't going to cut it. Now the one I have in my hand is the 4611. It's the least expensive out of the three, but it's also the one that I prefer the most. It's lightweight, it's very powerful, but most importantly, it's very quiet. Between the three of them, it is the most quiet one, and I really like it more than the other two. Now I do want to point out, as far as power levels go, the one that really surprised me was the 4630, the mid-range version. Now it's bigger around than this, it weighs more. The big advantage is going to be the fact that it is shallower, so it could get into some tighter situations. But do keep in mind, because of that weight, if you're at some weird angle, it can make you tired a lot faster. Now just keep in mind, as far as working torque versus the maximum torque, working is what you're going to be using on a daily basis. That maximum torque rating could be, if you hold on a bolt for maybe 2 or 3 minutes, that might be what you come up with. But as far as the 15-second runtime that I did is much more realistic, and those numbers are what you can expect to see. If you like this video, please click like. If you like my channel, please click subscribe. And thanks for watching.